But the reality is we're human, and when we're on social media and we're only seeing the highlight reel, when something human pops up, something relatable, something vulnerable, that builds trust.
Then what I have to do is offer them something that has a high enough perceived value to overcome their desire to not get pitched or spammed or bothered or annoyed.
I have to go on a gut level first and foremost. What sales mean?
How do we take some of the repetitive, quote unquote, bureaucratic tasks out of the hands of the rep and automate those to free up time for them to spend selling?
How can we create a place where it's positive, where there's nothing but motivation, education, and inspiration? And how can we do it consistently?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you once again for joining us on the Digital Selling Secrets podcast and show. Once again, we're here with another fantastic guest, but before we introduce our guest, I want to introduce our co-host, Gary Dennis.
Hello, everyone.
And me, Jerry Moneycarot. This podcast and show is brought to you by B2B Digital Selling Secrets book, and we have a special offer for all of you listeners out there. At the end of the show, we'll give you a little information about that special offer. But with that being said, let me introduce really quickly our special guest today. This is a leadership coach that will teach you how to become profitable, and an author. It is Renee Johnson. And Renee, give you the floor. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thank you, Jerry. And Gary, thank you, guys. You know, I'm very passionate about leadership. I'm glad that you started with that, because I truly believe that it can make a difference in our lives, in our careers, in our business, and really important, the communities at large. And that's what we're seeing right now in our environment that we're in, and how powerful leaders can or cannot be. And my charge is to work with leaders to find their voice so that they can achieve the visions they never thought possible. And that's what we mainly focus on, and in that, helping them become profitable leaders from the inside out. And the consciousness that's going on right now in our society is going to require transformation of leaders. The profit is different. It will affect your bottom line, yes, but it's got to be a holistic approach. And if that's an area that we're really passionate and working on. In fact, my second book will be more mainly about that as well.
So Renee, thank you so much for giving us that quick rundown. But really quickly, your book, Leaving Your Comfort Zone. Can you talk a little bit about that? We talked during the intro about confidence blockers. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what that means, and how that applies to us in the digital world, specifically in sales?
You bet. As I was sharing with you guys, so my book, Leaving Your Comfort Zone, covers 6 key core power zone principles. It teaches the reader how to identify what their power zone is, and then how to move into that and be in it more often than not. And one of the principles in there is identifying and overcoming the 4 confidence blockers. And through years of research and working with thousands of clients, I identified these 4 key things, and that is your fears. And you may say, well, that's obvious, but actually there is 4 different fears, and they interact with each other, and they can be hidden, and we don't realize how we've actually cultivated the behaviors and the beliefs where we tolerate it. It becomes normal. And when those are being bred, then it affects our internal barriers. And internal barriers, particularly in the digital selling era, is powerful to understand, because of it creates thought blockers, and it doesn't allow us to communicate at a higher level in the discovery process with our prospect or with we're working with employees in our culture, because we're already in this automatic mode. Our thoughts are like breathing. Unless we are choking, we don't really pay attention, too much on the day-to-day. And then the third one is lack of assertiveness. So the opposite of that is unleashing your assertiveness. And that's powerful, and is going to require you to build your confidence and to really unleash these blockers in a way that it supports you to stand in your own and your truth. And mainly in the era that or the segment that you're talking about here with sales, time management is a huge issue. And that's one of my I have a program called the Self-Honoring Approach to Managing Time. And I talk about that in that section of that chapter in, up-leveling your value and how you use your time is key to unleashing your assertiveness, to honor yourself, honor your strengths, honor your why, and making a difference in your life and others, whether you're leadership or you're in sales. So that's all about unleashing this assertiveness. And then the fourth one is about self-care. And self-care, we don't always think about that in confidence, right? And it's about committing to self-care. And when we are not filling up our self-care reservoir, how do we feel? I mean, think about the COVID times right now. Now people their routines and so forth are changing, and you may not get, you don't have the highs and lows where you're working really hard during the week and then all of a sudden, let's go play and let's go do something. And it's an automatic kind of recharge, or you lay on the couch and meditate, to the TV. So you've got to learn how to balance that flow so you refill your reservoir, because what I find is that the fastest way that we will move away from our confidence is if we don't feel worthy of showing up in our higher self. And that, if we are not filling up our value through self-care, we then can't do what? We can't honor our time.
Right.
We're going to tolerate more. We're not going to say no like we need to, or push ourselves and be deliberate. We're going to let the chatter in our head take over, and we're going to start believing it. And then what happens is that our fears take a life of their own, their alter ego. And so, like in leadership, I like we talk about self-esteem work, like leader worth following. You've got to help them see the best in them. And the fastest way and the cheapest way, to talk about profitable, is to recognize individuals and help them see the potential and give constructive feedback that calls them up, not call them out. That's so important. And I often go in and assess companies, or my team and I do. And one of the top 3 concerns that employees share is we don't get regular feedback, and they don't listen to our feedback. And so now you're squelching the opportunity to build confidence in your culture, to bring forth innovative ideas, to get people more accountable for your vision on their own. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Renee, you mind if I get some clarification around one point? So you mentioned assertiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every team interacts differently, obviously, and there's an environment, and maybe it's always been there, maybe it's just been more magnified over the past 10 years, 5 years, whatever, of people being easily offended by things, and so I've done some different training programs. I've observed some different things, and some of the ideas go back further than the past 5 or 10 years, but it seems like we have to be more cautious in this day and age of offending people. I could be completely wrong, but it seems like that's so.
I think you kind of.
Yeah. So
I was just gonna, if I could just add to that, the whole cancel culture versus sensitivity. So go ahead, Gary.
So with the assertiveness, and I've seen different types of training, like say something good. Then you don't want to be too direct, because if you're too direct, it's like, oh my gosh, he just asked me to do something, or versus saying something positive, focus on something positive, then asking for something. And I think sales leaders see it quite a bit. And I've worked in the startup world, plus I've worked in the corporate world. I feel like the startup world is a little bit more like, hey, let's get together. Let's get the job done. Hey, you do this, you do that. Okay, it sounds good. Let's go. And sometimes in more of the corporate world, you may say something and like, oh my gosh, he just, you didn't use the right tone, or you didn't, preface it with something positive, or you didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on being assertive to get the job done,
Yeah.
but at the same time not hurting people's feelings at the same time?
Great question. You're right. The sensitivity level has really. I mean, we could talk all day about that out in the culture there. Okay, well, we won't. We'll keep it positive. So let's first define the difference between aggressive and assertiveness.
Okay.
And I think that's key, because I'll often share that, and they'll go, "Well, that's we don't want to be assertive." Well, how do you define that? What do you mean? So aggressiveness is where you're forcing your idea, and it's your way or no way. Hit the highway, right?
Right.
And you're just set on everybody else. Assertiveness is where you are coming from a place that you know what you stand for. And when you know what you stand for, you know your values, and you know how to use those to inspire change in yourself and inspire change in others. So when you're assertive, then you are communicating from a place of belief in yourself and those values that you're wanting to communicate and see change in the culture in a way that inspires other people to see the value, that how it serves them as well. So the fundamentals of that is you've really got to, the assertiveness is, how do we align people and enlist them with our vision? How do we call them up to these values? Because values are our core motivating factor. That's how we as human beings make our decisions. That's how we attract each other and connect without saying words. There's an energetic exchange, proven scientific. This is not a woo-woo thing. And it's not about morals, okay, or good or bad. It is values. And you guys know this, like if you have somebody that approaches you and they're selling you something, but their lifestyle doesn't show that they believe in the value, what do you think? You kind of go, yeah, right. Okay, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So leaders, if you're offending people, you need to go back to yourself and say, how am I showing up? Am I truly an evangelist for what I'm requesting? If I ask people to show up on time, am I showing up on time? Am I being the example so that I can then demonstrate through what I'm doing and the results I'm getting, and then encourage them to go for those results? So we got to take it where we separate ourselves out of it and help the employees separate out of it. So it's not a personal dig. It is, okay, we want to go here. How do I help you go here? When you're assertive, you start to get people to lean into your vision and enlist in your vision. So now they want to fight for it instead of fight against you. So is that 100%? Excuse me. We're having a lot of smoke from the fires out here in Arizona today. So is that a perfect? No. You're going to have people that have tolerated through the years, and they're not in a place of honor. Remember, I talked about part of unleashing your assertiveness is learning how to come from a place of honor. And so now, guess what? You are reflecting to them by your request. You are reflecting to them something that they don't like, and they know in their heart they're not honoring themselves, right? That when we get offended, it is something that's being revealed to us through the other person. So you as a leader, don't take it personal. Instead, take the time to meet them where they're at. You cannot move somebody where you want to go, unless you're going to be a dictator and really aggressive, right? That's not assertive, unless you meet them where they're at. And so it's hard. The change factor can be difficult when people have tolerated and they've held so tight to their identity, and it's being challenged right now more than ever, is it not? Our identity factor, right? And so as a leader, it's about meeting them where they're at and understanding their beliefs. You don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to stay there, but you need to understand so that they feel heard and they have the safety to acknowledge how they feel, and then they're going to want to lean in and meet you where you're at. If you still can't get them to do that, and you can't move together in alignment with the values that you have in your culture, then you probably have a bad hire. Frankly, end of story. And this is going to demonstrate the leaders. I've been finding this, that your vision that you had once before, and as you define it differently now, and you start to learn how to be more holistic, and that is where profitable leadership, the new era of consciousness, is coming in, that we specialize in and have done that for over 10 years, but now it's becoming like top of mind for people, is that your vision is going to look different. Or you'll be left behind if you're not riding that wave. And so the vision that you're growing into, you may find people on your team that you hired at a different level in your vision. That's okay. You work to grow them and help them move past these fears and those limiting beliefs that they have about themselves. And the fastest way to do that is back to celebrating. Even little wins, and I know the patience factor can get there when you're in a high-paced culture, because I work with corporations, Fortune 500, to little mom and pops and individuals, right? But the long term, what do you want? Do you want to convert this person to be a champion of your vision? Then start championing them in areas that are aligned with your values. They're going to want more of that. We as human nature, we want more praise, don't we? We like it. We want to do more of it. We don't want to shy away from it. So I hope there that for your listeners, I've given you, if you listen back to that, I've given you several key principles in there that you can execute on.
Yeah, and I really think you made a good point on the value. So like, I guess whether it's a corporate environment or you have your own business, maybe more in the corporate environment where you can, in a lot of cases, you may inherit a certain team, right? So let's say a team or an office or a business or whatever isn't producing at the level that it's desired, right? Okay. So they, maybe they change leadership, they bring different people in, and now they've inherited a team with certain values on how they see things should be done, right?
Yeah.
So you have to convert those people through a change management process or whatever to get them to where they need to go. But they're already there and they already believe and have those values like this doesn't matter or this is the way to do things, and or you can build a new team, right? You can that could be part of the change management process. What do you think is the best path? Is it better to try to convert people's values on historical way of doing things and their beliefs are they're doing okay, versus hire a new team and with a new vision?
Yeah, always lean in and try to, I talk about in my coaching about 3 power leaks. Okay, the power leaks are wasted time, wasted resources, and wasted strength and talent. And in fact, on my site, you can go there and take an assessment, and you can see where you're leaking, how much profit you're leaking out the door. So always try to plug those and maximize your team first and foremost, because they're honoring the vision that was once there. Why hold that against them? With that. But now bring them together, and you've got to inspire the change. You've got to inspire the change. Inspiring change is an important new leadership soft skill that hasn't been there in the level that we've been teaching our leaders, and from the inside out, and leading that as well. And so bring them together, help them be part of the vision planning. Don't keep it behind closed doors and they just have to say, follow along like sheep. Bring them into the process, help them see where they can integrate those values, integrate their strengths, that they're not leaving behind that identity, because that's what causes the conflict, is when you leave behind all that, what you think is hard work, and you've trudged along, and you've even in some sense, you've actually given in to the leader that you didn't agree before, but you're doing it because you have to, that's part of the culture, and now you're ingrained in it. So bring them forth and bring them part of that process of creating the vision and defining the value. So let's say you're in a corporation, you'd be surprised. I go in and teach a lot and do trainings, and I've been in doing custom training where they'll bring their whole top level sales team in. I did this for a big pharmaceutical company here, beginning of the year, and they fly their whole sales team in here to Phoenix, and all the leaders are there, and we're going through, and I'm asking them to share their values, because they need to have this in the way they show up in their sales. Trust me, that's another conversation. And we're asking around the room, and do you know what? Nobody could say the values. And then we start to train on what is that doing to your vibration and your customer and so forth. So if as an individual team, you don't know your values, then now you're pushing and pulling people. So start there with your team, get in there and say, what do you think our values are? How have you seen this in the company? Here's what we have on the wall. Do you see that taking form? What would you add to this? Because people, that's our driving factor.
Right.
When you start to break down and you bring them part of the change factor, and in doing that also, you can have a department division vision that also aligns with the company's. And so that's a way that you can take when you're coming as a new leader and you're having to now get them to buy into you and your vision, is to sit down and create that and craft. We're going to honor our company vision, our mission, and we're going to bring the company values, but we're going to add a few values that you guys see that you want. And then we're going to bring this in and we're going to speak to this, and we're going to use you to help set our KPIs and set our goals and overcome our confidence blockers to grow into it and so forth, right? And become leaders in our right using this vision. And when you start to get people to see themselves as part of the vision, you don't have the demanding, you don't have the pushing and pulling. The percentage that's left behind, then those may be already bad apples, or I hate to use that. They just may not be a fit, and they were never a fit for your bigger vision, but they were hired at the other vision, and how they showed up was allowed because it worked in that culture, right?
Right.
So it may seem simplistic, but it's not. I have done what I call play bigger meetings, and we go in there and they go, oh, here comes the coach, whatever, and the owners are there, or the corporate leaders are there. But as soon as we start to talk about the values and how they feel them, and what it looks like in their day-to-day, and what it looks like with their customers, what it looks like in the results, what it looks like in the organization, people feel that. People then want to listen, and it softens those walls of protecting themselves and allows change to
Renee,
happen.
that really hits home there, and I totally agree with you. That whole alignment is absolutely required. You've shown us a lot and shared a whole lot with us, and we're getting on for time. So I just want to ask you real quickly, is there anything else you want to add, or where can people find you? And a little bit about that kind of information, if you don't mind sharing that with the team or with our listeners.
Yeah, with your listeners. First of all, thank you guys, Jerry and Gary, for having me here. Sure. One last tip I'll leave before I share how to reach out if you're curious how to explore this further. Is 3 key things to consider, whether you be an individual sales professional, specialist, or a leader. Take time to answer these 3 things. This will help you get up on that wave, that curve that we're having. And that is, what do you stand for? That's your values. Write them down. Define them. Not what Webster says, what you say. What do you stand for so you can stand out, and start to assess yourself against that and grow. The second thing is inspire. Create relationships that inspire, that they want to grow with you. They want to, like your customers, they want to be part of your vision or your team, not relationships that demand or sell, that push and sell. Start to inspire. And the third thing is, where are you keeping your word or not keeping your word? That's going to come up in this new holistic integrity, and your customers are going to want to see that, and so are your team, against those values. So take some time to audit yourself on that, and that's going to give you a head start against anybody else out there, and see what you come up with, some goals that you can set this next quarter. And then how to find me. I'm known as the Power Zone Coach, because that's what I do. I help leaders move into their power zone, out of that comfort zone. My book, power up, right? And so simply go to powerzonecoach.com, and there you'll find access to all my social platforms, and YouTube, LinkedIn, and my blog, and then several different assessments you can take, and then you can get my book on Amazon. But you can also I've got like 5 publications, but you can access everything off of my website, powerzonecoach.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we close, Gary, if you don't mind talking about our sponsor and the special offer for our listeners, please.
Yeah, absolutely. For our listeners, B2B Digital Selling Secrets is available for free. You just pay for shipping at B2B, that's the number 2, B2B digitalsellingsecrets.com. If you're in and by the way, business to business, that's what B2B stands for. If you're in a business to business environment, you're selling to other businesses, it's a great book to help you build relationships digitally and save time, meet your quotas faster, and have that extra time for your family or to get more sales, whatever it may be. So yeah, www.b2bdigitalsellingsecrets.com.
Thank you, Gary. And most of all, thank you so much, Renee, for joining us. And everybody, our viewers and our listeners, we thank you once again for joining us on another episode of the Digital Selling Secrets podcast and show. And we'll check you out next time. Cheers.